are getting to a critical point here. We see this. We see this is happening in the world. We see it if you watch the news. The planet's not doing well, on and on and on and on, right? We have wars. We are at the point in humanity where I do believe one of the shifts that people have been talking about is probably going to happen. Where I'm Michelle Clare, and this is your superior self.
Michelle, it's been too long since we last spoke. I'm very excited to connect with you on the show. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. It's really such an honor to be here and get to connect with you again.
Sure. I'm very curious. Your story, your journey is a wild one for sure. How do you experience reality?
Oh, well, I get to toggle between the etheric realm while I'm working and connect with spirit and loved ones and angels and all of that on the other side. And then I'm also very much human and in this part of, being in the world. So it's really been quite an experience, to say the least, and definitely challenging at times. But as I've grown through the years and really dove into my mediumship, our spiritual connection. What is this life really all about? It's brought in a great sense of balance and peace and a much broader understanding for me.
I love that. And so I'm very curious. Like your experience of reality is a little different than most. Seeing different dimensions and angels, of course, but you had three near death experiences as well. Were these gifts or these abilities available to you prior to those near deaths, or was it the near deaths that kind of sparked it and catalyzed these gifts for you?
So they were available in a much smaller dose, is what I would say. I had connections with my grandfather when I was 12 and he transitioned. I would tell my mom that we were talking and what he was saying, and my mom would say, well, that's what you think he would say. So I kind of learned at a young age that, oh, not everybody's talking to grandpa. This is just between us. Then a few years later, my grandma transitioned. The same thing happened. But it wasn't really until my near-death experiences that it started expanding to levels beyond what I could even imagine.
Did those, I guess, the near death, did it validate your experiences?
Yes, it did. So let's talk a little bit about my first near-death experience. That one happened for me in April of 2000. And at that point in my life, I was newly married. I didn't have any children. We were at the hospital that day to go visit my sister-in-law who was having a baby. And I was actually in the hallway talking to her RN, who happened to be my friend from high school. And while I was out there speaking with her, I ended up having this massive seizure. And all I remember is speaking to my friend. And then the next thing I know, I am waking up in this beautiful white room. And my grandmother is sitting there holding me with my head on her lap. And she is the youngest version of herself that I can remember seeing. She is very healthy. She is glowing. As I'm laying in this room, it appeared to be a white room. I start to notice that the walls, although they seem solid, they're alive. Every cell or molecule within them is radiating this light and this love from the inside out. And I start to notice that there's no time. I'm in this really blissful, timeless space. And as I'm just soaking in this energy, I look up and I notice that next to my grandmother is this 12-foot angel. And I'm really drawn into her beautiful energy and her presence. And I go to look for her feather wings because we all know angels have feather wings. And what I actually see is that they were made of light and they were iridescent. They were moving kind of like the aurora borealis would. It was absolutely stunning. And I thought to myself, what is your name? And I was thinking this in my head. And she answered me. She said, my name's Madeline. I'm one of your guardian angels. And I just remember being surprised because at this point in my life, I had never heard the term telepathic communication. I had not heard about near-death experiences, although this experience that I was having was more vivid and real than my everyday life. And then the next thing I know, I hear someone yelling, code, code, code. And I was back in my body. So I had quit breathing during this seizure, but because I was in the hospital, they were calling the code team. And I come back into my body. It feels like I've been dropped out of a 2-story building. It is dense. It is heavy. My arm felt like it weighed 500 pounds. And I realized I had had this unbelievable experience, truly beyond words. And I didn't feel like I had anyone I could share it with. I didn't know what to do with it. I had no idea what this was. But what I realized was this is part that's bringing me into the mediumship. Number one, I literally had a direct connection with the angelic realm that I truly already believed in. But my grandma and my guardian angel, they knew I was coming. They were waiting for me. I didn't know I was about to take that journey. And yet heaven knows, and they were waiting. And so it really expanded my awareness of what the other side is like. And it took me a few weeks before I shared that with my mom. And my mom believed me. She just didn't know what to do with it. I mean, this was April 2000. At that point in time, Google was not what it is. You couldn't just jump on there and start Googling and have 5,000 pages of responses popping up. And so it was really just trying to understand that I now had a knowing of this timeless, unconditional space. I saw my grandma in her physical form. I felt her holding my head. I saw this beautiful angel. And now I'm back on earth. And what do you do with that?
No idea. How do you integrate that experience into this reality? I feel like there should be more counselors and therapists that are more sensitive to these types of experiences. I feel like there are a lot more people coming out more so now about near-death experiences, and there is, Raymond Moody has done a ton of literature and science on, the commonalities between each experience. But how did you integrate back into this reality? Like, did you just stuff it down? How did you live your life?
Pretty much. I pretty much knew that I had had this phenomenal experience, but I was going to keep it to myself and just continue going about my daily life. Although I would say my connection with my grandmother and with the angelic realm was enhanced by this, I still didn't make it part of what I was doing every day, but I had this awareness. And so I just kind of go back into life. I'm also at that point in time not in a place where there's anyone in my life that's talking about mediumship, near-death experiences. The closest thing I had heard to that is I had heard of somebody who had said, during CPR, they saw a tunnel of light. And then that was it. Then they were back in their body. But that was the closest experience I had to someone else kind of knowing what I came to know.
Sure. I used to be a big fan of Rescue 911 growing up as a kid, and I used to love listening to those experiences of the people that were in the ambulance and driving down the road and seeing going into the light, right, or the
Right.
tunnel. Never really thought anything more of it, right? But now it's funny how my work has expanded into near-death experiences, and now I'm listening to people actually going through a tunnel and experiencing the light, which seems to be everything. When mystics talk about these samadhi experiences, they always explain it as light, and the correlation is just so strong between light, tunnels, a sense of connectedness, timelessness. Like, there's so many different uh, commonalities in a near-death experience. So I want to know, was your second near death, very similar to the first one, or was there any difference at all?
It was completely different. All
Oh,
three are
wow.
completely different. Yes. So, with my second near death experience at that point in my life, this happens in May of 2006. So, I'm married. I have 3 little kids. I have an infant who's 6 weeks old, a 2.5-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And I had had a lot of complications after I had my son, my youngest. So, I had been in the hospital the majority of 4 weeks following his delivery. And at that point, the doctor said, we need to do a D&C, which is a procedure where they clear out the uterus, they clean it out. And they said, after that, we think you'll be fine. You'll be able to go home. So I said, okay. Now, the night before, I had this pit in my stomach. I knew I should not do this. I had a really terrible feeling about it. But the doctor said 45 minutes, outpatient, go home. I'll be honest, I wanted to be done being sick, right? As anyone knows who's had to deal with something for a period of time. So I went ahead and I agreed to it. And the next morning, the doctors, I was in the operating room, were getting ready to go in there. I remember talking to them once again. They reassured me, quick, easy. They've done it a million times. I've had anesthesia before this experience. And whenever I've had it, it's always just a blank. I'm not having a dream. I'm not remembering. There's nothing there. And so I do remember counting backwards for the anesthesiologist as we're getting into the operating room. And the next thing I know, I look over and my beautiful white German Shepherd, who had transitioned a couple years before, she was 102 pounds, walked into the operating room, laid her head on my gurney, and we were gone. And we were immediately on this phenomenal beach. And on this beach, there were colors that we don't have here. Every cell, every molecule, everything is radiating light and love. Every drop of water in the ocean, every piece of sand, it is literally lit up from the inside out. And I noticed that we're in this timeless space, that it is that blissful love again. I'm looking at her. She looks like she's about 2 years old. We are telepathically communicating. She is so happy that I'm there. And we are running on this beach. And I just noticed that we are running for what feels like a very long time. And I start to notice we're not getting hot. We're not getting tired. We're not getting thirsty. Here's the funny thing about this near-death experience. Michelle, personally, I hate to run, so you would not see me running down the street. And I tell my friends, like, if you see me running, call 911. That's like emergency. That's not Michelle getting exercise. So here we are on this near-death experience on this beach, running and running for what felt like miles. And while I'm on the beach with her, I become aware that my son, who was 6 weeks old and at the house with my mom, is starting to get scared because he knows I'm getting ready to leave. And so I'm immediately drawn to him. And I go to him and I said, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to find a way to stay. And I start to pray and I start saying, I need help. It's not my time. My kids still need me. And at that point, I am literally transported back into the operating room. The operating room is, I can see kind of what's going on in there. I see Jesus come in as my friend, not as bow down to me or pray to me. And the next thing I know, this operating room lights up in this golden white light. And then I'm waking up in post-op. And I look over at the clock, and my half-hour, 45-minute procedure turned into a 3.5-hour emergency surgery because they had ruptured my uterus in multiple places and missed an artery by a millimeter.
Wow. So there's evidence of you experiencing this in the physical. And then, wow. When you were there on the beach with your dog, did it
Mhm.
feel like you were in that reality, like we're experiencing this reality now?
It actually still feels stronger and more vivid. So it's the difference of, this is extreme, but like, water's a little bit bland and vodka's got a strong flavor, even though they might look the same, right? This reality, earth reality, has the water flavor to it. That one has the really strong, bright, vibrant. It's a truth that resonates within every cell or atom or piece of the energy that you are. There is this knowing that you are absolutely loved and perfect exactly as you are.
Mm. So the first one we have your grandmother and the angel. The second one we have the dog and Jesus.
In Jesus, yes.
So what was his message for you?
His message was really not words. It was this energy of coming in that I am here, I am your friend, and I'm here to help you. And I really truly believe that he facilitated a miracle, because a couple days later, the emergency surgeon who was called in came into my room and said, "You shouldn't be here. Someone was watching over you. I have no reason to tell you why you're here right now." And because of that, I really felt like the message was bigger than just for me. It was that whether you believe in Jesus or not, or whether you've prayed to him your whole life, he wants us to see him as our best friend, and he's truly helping us.
What did he look like? Just out of curiosity. Out of all the pictures that you've seen, and I
Yes.
know we've all seen 1,000 of them, right? Is there one
Yes.
that accurately portrays what he really looked like?
Yes, and I love that you asked that because I've talked to one other person who's had NDEs that saw him exactly the same way I did. And I cannot remember the name of this beautiful girl who painted him, but she's a young girl. I believe her parents are from a different country. She lives in the US and he has shorter hair, greenish eyes. I would have to, I can send it to you after
Wasn't
this.
that picture in the movie? Wasn't there a movie of a little
Oh,
boy's near
maybe.
death, I think? And I think at the end of the movie, they had this little girl, the little boy sees Jesus and has a conversation with him. And then
Mhm.
at the end of the movie, there's I think there is a little girl who paints a portrait of Jesus. And I think you're describing that,
I
which
think so
sounds
too.
similar. But
Yes.
yeah, what about his eyes? Like his eyes
Oh,
were very vibrant in the painting. Like
yes.
what was that? Is that the first thing you noticed when you saw him?
Oh, absolutely. His eyes were like the whole universe. And it wasn't like looking into someone's eyes. It wasn't just that. It was like you were looking into the soul of the universe, the soul of source, the soul of all that is. And at the same time, his look back to me was the same way. Like I knew he clearly saw my soul, not human Michelle. Like he was seeing something that probably most people never get to see, including myself, because it was on such a deep, profound level. And that feeling of, I love you, I'm here to help you, I'm your best friend, was what I will carry with me for the rest of my life, was just that unconditional love. He did not look at me and say, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. There was truly no judgment.
That's so fascinating. So, I mean, I guess I'm gonna ask a dumb question. Like, how did you know it was Jesus? I mean, I assume he's not wearing a name tag, right? Like, I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, how did you know it was him? Was it just this presence? Like, oh, hey, what's up, Jesus? How are you doing?
Yeah, well, so number one, I immediately, what I will tell you, it's very similar to what I do with mediumship. You know his soul's energy. Like
Mm,
there is this energy that envelops you in the sweetest, most perfect eternal love. And it is just this feeling of like home. Um, and better than that, because it's this also included in there is this knowing that you are loved beyond measure, that you can do no wrong. I can't even, it's very hard to put into words, but without a doubt, he gave me the visual of what we as humans perceive as Jesus. But more importantly than that, it was everything that his energy was radiating.
did he say anything about how we have created religion after him?
Nope, we did not have that. If we had that conversation, I don't remember it.
Well, I'm fascinated because, like, I feel like as I go deeper into my meditations, I can go a little bit deeper into the actual non-physical, and I
Yeah.
feel like you can take the learnings that you have there and bring them back with you to the body and integrate those that knowledge or wisdom, or maybe it's like you go there and you absorb whatever energy is there, and then you can bring it back to the body. You might not be able to remember what you're bringing back to the body. It's like some people with psychedelic experiences
Mhm.
where they have these peak experiences with spirit guides or Mother Ayahuasca or whomever, some type of entity, non-human intelligence, but they can't remember exactly what they know the feeling of it when they're there. It's very magical and very powerful for them at a psychic level. And then when they come back, they're like, I don't know what we talked about. Like I wrote something down, but it's all gibberish. But I feel like you're transferring that energy back into the body, and it just takes a moment of sitting down in meditation and going back to that space of feeling, and then you can kind of integrate it. Maybe you can call it like an upgrade, maybe to the body.
Yeah, I do believe that. So for me, what I would say, we're talking about a little bit of two things here. One, we're talking about your soul remembering, because your soul is connected to the all that is at every single moment. It is connected to the past, present, and future, because all of that is happening right now. So your soul is already connected to all of this. So what we do with meditation is we almost put the spotlight on our soul. It's a little bit of a soul journey. We get out of our human mind and our human ego, and we go back into remembering who we are, remembering what we know from maybe previous lifetimes, from esoteric knowledge, all of these things that are available to us. And then as we bring that memory or that remembering back into our human form, it does cause us to have what I would call an upgrade. And this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, as our souls get better at going back and forth between the realms, we do need to upgrade our human vibration, because this body does have to be able to attune to the transition of our soul going in and out so effortlessly and bringing in the higher source of information.
I love that. So now you've had the second near death. What does that connection feel like to you on the other side? Do you feel like the veil is very thin where you can just sense it wherever you go? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So after the second one, actually, well, I'm going to be really honest. Yes, the veil was thin and I went back into motherhood. I had 3 little kids. I was a stay at home mom. I was in the hospital for at least another week after that, because the infection got pushed into my body cavity. So I was on IV antibiotics. And it took me about 4 months to get back to even 80% of my normal level of functioning prior to all of that. So I have this awareness, once again, that heaven is real, Jesus is real, my dog made it to heaven. Like, I have all of this knowledge, and I again have no one to share it with at this point. I still did not know the term near death experience. I knew I had an experience, I knew Jesus was real. I knew that I truly felt like a miracle had occurred, but I couldn't really explain how, or even in our human terms, right? A lot of times people will say, well, I'm not worthy of that. There was probably a part of me at that time that was wrestling with that. Was I worthy of that? um Now, from what I know now, we're all worthy of that, and heaven deems us all worthy of that all of the time, but we have to allow for that to be our truth also.
Sure. I love it. I love all of it. Was there any like realization of what you truly are at, not the human body, right? But was there a realization, a remembering of like what your true essence is?
Yeah, with all of these. So there was this greater opening. So what I would say is my mediumship gets better. I'm either having more communication with grandma and grandpa more often. It's more clear. The mediumship is opening up. I now know Jesus is real. My angels are real. And I'm bringing this in, but still only for myself. I'm not talking about it. I'm not in an area with people that I feel safe to talk about it with. And I'm also not in a place in my life where I know anyone else who's had anything like this.
Mhm.
And everyone keeps saying to me, gosh, you sure got lucky, or we're praying for you. And yet there was something deep inside me that had a knowing that was so much bigger and more profound than everyone's kind words. And I know they were being very kind. They meant it from a very genuine place. But now I had a knowing that a lot of them weren't ready for.
Sure. Were there any life reviews or any future life reviews, anything like that?
No.
Premonitions? No?
Mm-mm.
Man, I love those.
I know, those are the best, right? Well,
I'm just kidding. Not that
when
you haven't had a great experience, but it's just like I like hearing how I don't know. It's just like the life review I think is important because you can kind of see parts of your life that you didn't fully love, or things that you could have improved upon, and then the future probabilities I think are awesome because what does that say about reality? Like different multi dimensions, multiverse, like different options, different choices that can lead to different experiences. I think that to me is fascinating. Not that everything you just didn't mention is fascinating. It's all fascinating, but
right.
as you know, there are some differences in near death experiences. So let's go to the third one. Like,
Yes.
what did that look like?
Yeah. So this one was the most profound for me. And this one also had the most physical trauma. Some people have near death experiences and they come back with miraculous healings. This was not my situation. In any of these, I came back with a lot of physical healing that had to happen. But I do want to say this because this is really important for people to know. Not in one of my near death experiences did I feel the pain or trauma that my human body was going through. And I think this is really important because we always worry about our loved ones when they're transitioning. And I just want to say that on a soul level, our souls don't need to feel that. So it's not uncommon for the soul to disconnect from the body before the body goes through the trauma or the final shutting down. So with that being said, my third and final near death experience until I leave this planet for good happened on November 1st, 2011. And so for people who like numbers, that's 11/1/11. And on that day, I have 14-foot ceilings in this house. So about 12 feet off the ground. I have battery operated candles, and I was going to change the batteries in them and then go pick up my oldest, who was at school. My younger two were at home with me. As I climb up the ladder, this is something I've done 20, 25 times. I get towards the top and I feel it start to shift. And as the ladder starts to shift, I literally go, oh, this is going to hurt. And I can just feel like my body tensing up. And at that moment, I am ripped out of my body, not in a painful way, but in a very fast way. I am turned around. I am facing my body in the ladder, suspended in the air like a freeze frame in a movie. And I'm standing with these three people, and I don't know them, but they feel like dear friends or family. I feel like I've known them all of my life. One is an Asian man, one's an Egyptian woman, and one is a Hawaiian man. And as I'm in this space again with this blissful love, this timelessness, looking at my body in the ladder suspended in the air, they said to me, they said, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay or do you want to go? And I was really caught in my head because I was trying to understand how I had forever to decide what I wanted to do when I knew my body was going to hit the floor within a second. And finally, I see my younger two kids in the kitchen. And when I see my kids, I automatically know, oh, I need to stay. I need to stay. As I make this decision, I am downloaded with a bunch of information. And the information was like, okay, but Michelle, now you have to go back and you have to do your mediumship and you have to help people in the way that you can help them. And you have to know that your 25-year marriage will probably end in divorce and that there's more trauma to come. And so what's really intense about this near-death experience is that the kind of the pivot point of my entire life happens when time is standing still and I make this decision that, okay, I will follow through with my soul's plan to do mediumship and help people that way. And spirit is telling me you're going to have a lot of trauma to come. They're not saying, hey, it's rainbow and unicorns from here on out. They're predicting future trauma. And yet I'm in this space. And I remember clearly saying like, okay, send me in, I'll go, I'll take it. I remember agreeing to come back, even though I knew more trauma was coming. So I end up falling off of the ladder. Let me add this real quick because I bypassed this. Before I made the decision to come back, I saw another angel come in, and this angel was dressed in red and gold. And when I saw this angel, I knew immediately it was here to either shift something so that I could stay, or it was going to take me home. So after I make this decision and I get my download, what happens is I fall off of the ladder. I hit the back of my head on the corner of my granite island. I have a 5.5-inch skull fracture, a brain bleed. I lost my taste, my smelling, my equilibrium, part of my hearing. But what they found is I literally survived the fall by 1/2 inch because I missed my brainstem by 1/2 inch. And that was how much that angel had moved my head, which was the difference of me staying and going.
Wow. So 2 angels and 2 NDEs, one with a dog and Jesus. Man, what the angels, what is their relationship to us?
Yeah. So my understanding with the angels is that they're really here as protectors for us, our life guides, which I later found out those three people were my life guides. I didn't have that term when I had that near-death experience. So I just thought they were really nice, loving people who knew me. They're actually our life guides. So our angels come as protectors and guiders. And the life guides were actually the ones who said to me, okay, Michelle, like it's decision time. You're either going back in and you're finishing the plan, or it's time to come home. You choose.
Mhm. So what do you I'm assuming it's your children that kept you coming back?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
did you see like your life's purpose? Like why it is here? I mean, besides being an awesome mom, right? Like
Right.
and being that role model for them of never quitting, right?
Right.
What do you think your life purpose is here? Is to educate, to expand consciousness? What does that look like?
Yeah, it really is to do this soulful work now. So it is about educating. It is about expanding everyone's consciousness. It is also about bringing in the reality that none of us are living this life alone. So often in our human form, we feel like it's me against the world or whatever this feels like. And that's not true. We have angels, life guides, loved ones, ascended masters who are all wanting to help us and helping us every step of the way. So I really believe my life purpose is for something so much bigger than Michelle. It is really to start spreading that message on larger levels so people realize also that no one is better connected to God's source, the divine, than you.
Mhm.
Than you.
What what do people like, how do they react when they listen to your near-death experiences? Does it help alleviate some of that fear of death?
Yeah, I have found that a lot. That's one of the main things that I find when people want to talk about near death experience. They're either fearful of death or they've just lost a loved one and they want to know, what did they find? What happened? Are they okay?
Mm. And how do you hear, messages from the other side? Can you just have it like when I'm assuming the veil is super thin for you, but how do you hear like other angels? How do you hear your ascended masters, family members or people, entity, non-human intelligences,
Right.
or anything? Like, how do you hear? Do you hear that? What does that look like?
So once in a while, I will hear some words and I will get some visuals, but my main message of communication is feelings. So they are transferring and transmitting feelings to me, which I am turning into words. So a lot of times, it's similar to looking at someone that you know and you know exactly what they're going to say before they say it. You don't have any way to sit there and say, "Oh, so and so is going to say this, this, and this." It's just there. That's really how I work with spirit. It's a transference of energy, energetic telepathic communication.
Are there different types of angels?
There are. I'm familiar with at least 4 different types that I've come in contact with, but I think there are probably endless types of angels.
Sure. Is there a hierarchy? Is there like,
There- I think there is a hierarchy because the way that it works that I'm understanding is we definitely have levels, right? So levels of expertise, just like we say, oh, Jesus is a master, Buddha is a master, right? We all have levels. We're all souls. So whether you're living in spirit world, human or human world, we have levels and levels of people that know more or souls that know more, and levels of newer souls that are learning as they grow too.
hmm. Did they, does any of your guides allude to like what's coming up for us in humanity as far as like our development, our consciousness and its evolution? Did they ever allude to what's going to come?
They do. I like to, I'll put it this way. I feel like we're at a really critical point in right now, the next few years of really being called to tap into our own divinity as humans. We are being asked to know that no one knows better for us than we know for ourselves, whether it's with food, medication, on and on and on and on, right? And I'm not against medication. I'm not against religion. I'm not against any of that stuff. But what I want to tell everyone is empower yourself to make the right decision for you. So what's happening is so often people are giving their power away to things that they think know more than them, but that's not accurate. Everyone has a soul, and that is our antenna and our connection to source. And so really, whether you are meditating, praying, however you are connecting to spirit, it's time to do that on a higher level because we're being called to do that now.
How does someone explore that internal world? Like how do you guide them and navigate them through meditation, or if that's meditation, like how do they go into the inner world and navigate or map out like, just what that looks like for them?
Right. So there are a lot of different ways. I know there are a lot of people that will do, Aya or psychedelics like you were talking about earlier. And that's productive for some people because it really shuts down their thinking mind and they can feel. Other people will do breath work. That's one thing that seems to work really well for people because you get into a pattern and a breathing place where you can actually let go of your humanness and just feel what is there. Meditation is great. Binaural beats is something good, or hemi-sync, where we're really working with balancing our brain. But I also like to tell people, don't overthink this because this is where we get stuck. Notice, where do you get your aha moments throughout the day? Is it in the shower? Is it driving the car? Is it at the gym? Is it going for a walk? Wherever these moments are, I want you to start setting an intention around these. So it's like, okay, as I'm driving to the grocery store, I'm going to get the answer for whatever the question is, and then just let it go and let your mind relax. And what you'll find is this is coming in. The
Mm.
information, it's all like the AM FM station, right? They're playing right now. You and I just are not tuned in, so we're not listening to it. We are on a different frequency recording this, right? but all of the frequencies are playing all of the time. It's about letting ourselves tune into them.
Do, do any of the spirits or people, or I should say, beings on the other side, do you ever like have to like shield yourself or protect yourself from like too many messages at once?
That's a great question. So really the way that I work is when I am sitting down to do a reading and prepare with someone, I open up my energy field. And I always say that any information that comes in is in light and love and for their highest good. And I really just kind of open up and expand and let whatever they need to hear that day flow through. When I'm done working, I do kind of close down my energy field because I cannot get through the grocery store or Target with all of these, lights on and everybody's grandmas and angels, tapping me on the shoulder.
Wow. What's their messages? Like, what's the common message for that you're receiving from most beings?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the biggest things, oh my gosh, I swear, I think this is every human problem, is our self worth and loving ourselves. I cannot tell you how many times the messages are coming through from loved ones in spirit or angels where it's like, quit beating yourself up. I want you to learn to love yourself, and that you are worthy. And I think this is one of the things that we internalize in the human form, whether it is from religions or family or whatever. We think I'm unworthy and I'm unlovable, and none of those are true, but we've internalized it to the point that we believe it is, and that's what's affecting our life and the way that we're seeing it and the way that we're being able to actually dive in, enjoy it, and live it.
Mm, I love that. I love that. What do you think about the shadow side of us, right?
Yeah.
Um, and working with that, like, do you teach people how to accept the shadow, those dark parts of themselves, how to integrate some of that trauma into, you know, basically reclaiming all parts of self, integrating that into the being that you are, and then consciously creating the life that you want to live?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's you've got to know your shadow side because it's as much a part of you as the light bright side. And they're both equally valuable. Let's talk about it from a soul level. So a lot of times I hear people talking negative about the ego. The ego, it's bad, it's this, it's that. Guess what? Your soul chose your ego. You were not accidentally assigned some ego that like stuck to you like a piece of lint that you weren't expecting. Your soul chose the ego that you would have for this lifetime. Your soul also has a good, strong knowledge of your shadow side that's going to show up in this lifetime, depending on, the challenges that come your way. So both of these are actually meant to be tools for us to know ourselves better and step into our full power. Neither of them are negative, evil, need to be ignored. It's more about embracing the whole because that's when you're owning your power.
Mm. How did you heal yourself after the third one? Did you change your diet? Did you meditate? Did you visualize? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So that was a hard one because I needed a lot of therapies. I'm still in cranial sacral therapy, and that's been 12 years now. So yes, I had to go some of the out of the box ways. I did have to have vestibular therapy so I could sit up. I did have to have physical therapy. I did have to have different therapies like that. But one of the things that I did was I got a keyboard and I started learning to play piano. And I want to say this because this is really important. I remember 6 months after my head injury going to the doctor and saying, I don't have taste. I don't have smell. It was actually worse than that. I had phantom taste and smell. So if I got a whiff of coffee, it didn't smell like coffee to me. It smelled and tasted like rotting, dead, burning bodies. It was very challenging. I couldn't taste anything or smell anything that was real. And so I did different things. So I started playing piano because I went to the doctor and he said, this is as good as you're going to get. You might get 1% to 2% better. And I remember going home devastated that day. And yet I knew he was giving me his best opinion. And yet somewhere inside of me, I said, this is not going to be my story. This is not my story. I will not own that. So I started to play piano. I continued with my regular therapies. I went to healing services, and I started doing things that are outside of the box for healing, not exactly what Western medicine would have you do. I did some acupuncture, I did cranial sacral therapy, I did all sorts of different things. And a few years, about 3 years after, I did receive a miraculous healing at one of the healing services. And at that one, this beautiful lady named Sarah O'Meara, she's here in Paradise Valley. She works with the Holy Spirit. The night before, the Holy Spirit will come in and give her a list of what's going to be healed. So if you have like a back pain or something, everyone, when she calls out back pain, who has back pain will stand up. So I was not going to go to this service, but I had a friend who was dying of colon cancer, and she said, please go with me, because I had started going with her, but it was the Christmas service. You know, that time of year is busy and hectic. So I said, okay, I will go with you. We go to the service, and she says, so this is 3 years after my injury, where I should not be getting any better. Like the doctors have said, you're done. She calls out somebody who fell off a ladder and had back pain. And I see about 10 people stand up, and she goes,
10 people?
10, yes, because they all have back pain. But she gets to me. I was the last one she got to, and none of them had fallen off the ladder. And I said to her, I said, I'm the one who fell off the ladder. And she looks at me, and she's probably an 80-year-old lady. She said, well, God knows you fell off the ladder. And she was kind of spicy. It was really cute. But at that moment, I felt what I would call the Holy Spirit moving through me. I felt warmth. I felt tingling. I started to weep. I couldn't even hear what she was saying because I was so overwhelmed with emotion. And then I went home, and my friend and I were like, what just happened? That was like a back healing. Well, I had a chronic back pain since falling off the ladder, and I had scoliosis prior to that. The next morning, I wake up to let my dog out. I open the door, and for the first time in years, I have that winter smell coming in. And then my daughter wanted hot chocolate, and I made hot chocolate, and it smelled like hot chocolate. And it was unbelievable. Not only was my back better, my smell and my taste came back completely healed. And so I always tell people, the medical community, they're going to give you their best opinion. Don't own it. I give you the power to say, this is not my story. This is not how my story ends, because I truly believe that had I owned that, I would not have been in alignment to receive that healing that day.
Do you think you have to reach that vibration to be healed?
I don't think you have to reach a certain vibration. I think it's about allowing. So when I've asked Spirit about this, I said, Spirit, what are miracles? And Spirit's funny. Spirit's like, Michelle, we don't call them miracles. We call them happenings. They happen when you get in alignment, body, mind, and spirit. So when we allow ourselves to relax and ease into it, in that moment, when she called, someone who fell off the ladder with back pain, I wasn't thinking I'm a bad person, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy of a miracle. I really wasn't in that headspace. I was in the headspace of really actually praying for my friend to get the miracle, because I knew hers was a life or death situation. And so I think what happened was the resistance that human Michelle would have to believing she was worthy of a miracle or a miraculous healing was not present in that moment, which is what allowed me to receive it.
Oh, I love that. So that program wasn't there. That was
Mhm.
limiting you from receiving that. What's the difference between, and it's just so funny how my curiosity works. Like just popped in. Like, what's the difference between the Holy Spirit and God?
Yeah, I feel like the Holy Spirit is a spark of God. I feel like we're all sparks of God. So I wouldn't say that it is different than God, but I would also be really bold and say, I don't think you're different than God. I believe you have that spark and that light of God within you. And I like to use, do you see this picture behind me? This beautiful picture is kind of my metaphor for a couple different things. Number one, you can't see it in this lighting, but it has these beautiful sparkles all over it. So it reminds me of the light that I saw in heaven, which you can't see as well here. But this also reminds me of our soul. And so I like to tell people, when you are talking past lives, this is what we're talking. It's all right here, right now, but each lifetime would be a different ray of light that is coming off of that soul. So your grandma who existed as your grandma is still that ray of light existing within that soul. And this is how it's all right here, right now. Now, the next level up with this is also like our souls and God's source, the divine. So think of every soul as being a ray of light off the beautiful divine. We are all God. God is all us. And that's really the interconnectedness of it.
Sure. So after having 3 near-death experiences and having all these great peak experiences, like if you were to rewrite the way that I guess, worship, right? Like
Mhm.
if you were to say, "Hey, we should probably worship a little bit more like this," or if you were to create a religion, like what would that look like?
Mm. Wow, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that anymore. All right, well, it's going to be real honest. First of all, it is just going to be like love people, but also love yourself, because I think so often we forget to love ourselves. When we base our lives on love, it doesn't mean you can't have money and trips to Tahiti and fast cars and great friends and a big house. But love really is the currency which everything needs to flow. And so if I were to say, let's pick a new religion, I'm going to say, yeah, let's base everything on love, and that idea that I see the divine in you, you see the divine in me, that we are all part of this eternal, beautiful light. That would change everything, because the other thing about that is it makes us see everyone as equal. My spark is not bigger than yours. Yours isn't bigger than mine. We are all just these beautiful rays of light. And when we really settle into that, we see that we are all one, and love is possible to love each one, because we're all just pieces of God expressing itself at this moment.
I love that. Do you think God is conscious of our suffering?
Yeah, I would say there's an awareness. There's no way to not have an awareness. Yes. Have you heard about like the Higgs field? I'm sure somebody you've had on
Mm.
here has talked about the Higgs field, right? So when we talk about the field, that within this field, there is all knowing, all everything for all of time, basically, right? And we are connected to that Higgs field. So is there an awareness of the suffering? Yes, there's an awareness of the suffering, but let's look at that from a little bit different perspective. I believe in pre-life plans. So I do not believe that any soul is accidentally here on planet Earth. It's also my understanding from spirit world that we have many souls standing in line, waiting at their opportunity to get a shot at this planet. So we plan this lifetime before we come in. And now I know you're going to say, Michelle, why? Why would I plan something hard, something challenging? Why would I suffer? Why would I have grief? Why would I be abused, or whatever these things are? What happens is, on a soul level, before we come into this human form, we are in spirit world, and we sit down and we say, these are the lessons that I want to learn. I want to experience the contrast. Maybe that contrast is finding out what it's like to have a really mean brother, or suffering a great loss at a young age. And then, excuse me, then what will happen is we pick the players on our team, and we come in, we pick the lessons that we want to learn, and we decide to come to planet Earth. So nobody is accidentally here. If you were told that your mother got pregnant with you young and you were an accident and that's why you were put up for adoption, that's the human story. That's not your soul story. Your soul said, I'm going to come to planet Earth. I'm going to come in through this woman so that I can get to this family to be raised by them. There really is no such thing as accidents with that.
I
But
love that.
we come to play and learn and grow in the contrast. And we do choose the challenges of our life so that we can evolve further as a soul.
Hmm. Did you have you ever had any experiences with I know you have experiences with angels and past loved ones, but what about non-human intelligences? Like maybe ETs or anything like that?
Yes, I have. I've had a couple of experiences. So, one thing that I've learned with ETs is they tend to communicate very telepathically. So, as I've gotten better at this, that's the information, not necessarily seeing them, but feeling the information and the connection with them. And then, actually, I was just in Sedona a couple of weeks ago and I saw a UFO. So, that was really fun too.
Really? What did it look like?
So it looked like this orange orb. It was huge, and it went straight up from the ground and literally disappeared into what? I have no idea. It went straight up. It was so fast, and then it was gone. And it shouldn't have been gone yet. I should have been, like, humanly, I was thinking I should be able to trail this thing with my eyes for a while. It just, oh, it was so fast, but it was amazing.
So orange orb. Could
Hmm.
you see anything in there in that orb at all?
It was at a distance, so I couldn't see beyond what looked like. I mean, it was giant for me to be able to see it. I have no idea how big it really would have been if I had been closer to it. But I couldn't see anything except what looked like this giant orange orb.
Hmm. Was it contact at the in the desert? Is that what that was called? Like I there's a couple of
Oh,
events that are similar to that where like were you out with a group of people and like just kind of putting that intention out and trying to see something, or was it just like I looked up in the sky and there was a
yeah.
UFO?
I just looked up in the sky. I was at the
Wow.
Airbnb with my friend and we were sitting on the patio. And I said to her, "Did you see that?" We both saw it at the same time and it was gone.
Wow. Yeah, there's some groups that go around to different deserts, like in Arizona, and I know there's some places. I've had some friends go to California, like Southern California, and they'll go out and I think it's called Contact in the Desert,
Hmm.
which sounds awesome. And they get together as groups, large groups of people, and they set their intention that they really want to make contact. And then I haven't heard back from them about whether or not they made contact, but I heard they had a great time. I didn't get this, the details, the deets, but
Right.
there have been cases in the past where people have made that intention. I've done it actually, where I've been out on a run early in the morning. It's like the sun is rising, and I'm in this field, and I don't know what it is. It's not like coming from ego, but it's like this place of humility and just making a
Hmm.
connection and looking up and just saying, God, source, universe, cosmos, like, connect with me. I want to connect with you. And I made this strong intention. Like, I don't even know what that means to make a strong intention. I was just totally sincere with it. And I
Hmm.
see this light up in the sky. It moves. It looks like a star. So a star looks like a star immediately lights up bright. So like I can see it obviously, moves and then goes out. And I've never seen anything like that before. So I'm going to say it's something very, UFO ish.
Hmm.
However, I made this intention. Like I've been to this space in this spot in this, it's along my run, my path, like almost every other day, and I've never seen anything like that. So for me, that was very powerful for me because it's like I made a connection to something higher than myself, and it was like giving me a sign or giving me like, hey, I see you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And they do. They understand. They communicate with telepathic and with energy, right? So when you are sincerely coming from your heart saying, "Hey, give me a sign. I'm ready. I want to see something." They'll show up.
Sure. And I've done it all. Cardinals are huge for me. They're very symbolic for past loved ones. Numbers, all of that. But this was the first time that an actual star that wasn't a satellite, because you can see the satellites up in the sky. You can see them
Mhm.
floating across. Um, but this wasn't that at all. It was bright enough to where it got my attention. It came out of nowhere, it got really bright, moved, and then went out. And I was like, wow, that's so powerful. And I love hearing stories like that because it's like it lets us know that we're not alone, that something is hearing us, that something, is supporting us, and that whatever it is that we're experiencing, whether it's three near death experiences and
Yeah.
trying to self heal ourselves, right? Like there is a higher entity, a higher being, a higher force. I don't even want to call it higher, but there is an external
Yeah,
force that is like helping us along the way.
absolutely. Yeah, we are not on this journey alone.
Mm, I love it. What has been, you've had many fascinating experiences and very many, um, I'm sure, um, existential shocks for you. What, if you can go back and remember, besides near death experiences, has there been something in your reality that kind of stood out than most experiences? Like maybe a glitch in the system, a glitch in the matrix, where you're like, it reminds you, it's like, oh, that's right, I'm here in this 3D reality. This truly isn't what true reality is. It's, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, slowly waking back up from that dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I actually had a connection with spirit when I was in a meditation, and spirit said to me, "Michelle, you ran this life 100 times in sim before you would come in. So even in the spirit world, you can run it in sim before you come in." And they were kind of giving me a hard time. They're like, "Just relax. It's going to be fine. You've done this 100 times in sim." And I was just like, oh my, I didn't even know until they said that we could do it. But That is true. I will say this though, part of the veiling process is so that when we are here, it feels real because that's what we came for. We chose to incarnate here for the contrast, for the feeling of individuality, separation, whatever these words are that we want to use. But there are moments where you get this awareness where you say, "Oh yeah, this isn't all that is, and there is a simulation happening."
Wow. So what is deja vu to you?
Oh gosh. Okay, so let me just say, because we were talking about like what's changing. I have had more of that. To me, it's like a timeline crossover, is what it feels like. And I have had it so much this last month. I can't even believe it. I'll literally be talking to my friend. I'll say, "Didn't we just talk about this yesterday?" She's like, "I didn't even talk to you yesterday." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Because I feel like we just talked about this. But it's almost like a timeline crossover or a remembering of something that is coming up, is how I see deja vu, which would also lead me to tell you we've probably planned a lot of our timelines if we're remembering the future and in our human form, it hasn't happened yet.
So how many times do you think we've had this conversation? 100
Oh,
times?
to get it right, probably at least 100 times.
Do you know the outcome, like, of those simulations? Have you seen the outcome of where you're headed?
You know what? I get glimpses of it, but I haven't seen the big picture. Now, I don't know if that is kind of like off limits to me at this point in time, but or maybe I'm blocking myself from it. Let's be real honest. Probably human Michelle is blocking herself from that more than it's being blocked from me. But I do believe that if we tap into that, or if we're connected with the right people, the right, people who know how to read those things, they'll be able to see it for us.
Hmm. How often do you go see a medium or psychic?
You know, not very often. I have a couple, I've got friends that are mediums and psychics. So normally they'll just be like, call me up, girl, I've got to tell you this, blah, 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 blah. This just came through for you. Okay, thanks. Love you. Talk to you later. So as far as appointments, I don't do too many of them. I don't do astrology. So I do like to get an astrology appointment once a year because that's always intriguing to me, how the planets line up and what they say. And oh my gosh, the accuracy with that.
Does your astrology does your chart resemble someone that is psychic and medium?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to ask my astrologer. I think so, but I
I
don't
have
even
no idea.
I don't know either. I don't even know astrology. That's why I like to go to people who do that. Here's one of the things that I love though with astrology, numerology, mediumship, psychic, all of these things. What I find is I work with people who do different modalities. Even if we're talking tarot cards, it's very interesting because they'll do it their way, I'll do it my way, and we all get to the same conclusion. So it tells you we're tapping into the same information, we're just doing it in different avenues.
So let me ask you this. This is a hard question, right? So when a psychic tells you your future probability states, do you think it's them telling you what your future is going to be, or that you're believing them and creating it for yourself?
So, well, I would say this. Actually, number one, I don't think any psychic is 100% accurate because I don't believe anyone's future is etched in stone. I just don't. From my understanding of quantum and the way that our soul has plans and agreements and things that are changing, it's always, we have an idea. We do have a basic blueprint, but think of that as like, when you put up your Christmas tree at Christmas time, you put up the stick, you put up some real like solid pieces, and then you start adding, and now we're going to put on some lights and we're going to put on tinsel and we're going to do that. That's what our life ends up looking like. So do we have an outline? Yes, we do. But we have so many opportunities that will happen. What I have found when I'm doing psychic readings, what I'm doing is I'm reading the energy of the most likely probability for you. That's going based off of, and it's not me thinking this, it's just the way the energy reads, um, off of the things that you've done in your past, right? So if you're always like, I always take a right turn at this light, most likely next time you hit the light, you're going to take a right turn there too. It'd be really rare for you to take a left turn, but you absolutely could. So when we're reading energy psychically, there are some psychics that are phenomenal and have a really good ability to perceive things, but really you're looking at the most probable outcome for that person, yet they still have free will and they can change it at any moment.
How do you change that, right? Like, how do you, like, I think I was sleepwalking for a long time in my life, just kind of following my patterns or following my programs and just, uh, pursuing the things that I thought I should be pursuing.
Hmm.
But then as you awaken down this path, as you become more conscious, you start realizing a lot of, you start remembering more who you are, right? And so
Right.
how do you consciously start creating more of the life that you want?
Yeah. So let's talk about free will because it's all about free will. And basically, if we look at humans and we say we have maze A, B, and C, if you get yourself in maze A, you're probably going to keep going through the channel and end up at what is at the end of maze A, the same for B and C. What we really have to do is start tapping into our soul, what our soul wants, what our desires are. So we've got to take it to a higher level than that maze, which is down here. We want to be up here. That's where your free will is and your ability to create what you want. Because once you get in the human maze, you're probably going to follow through with maze A till the end. But we can always step out of that onto a soul level and say, okay, where human Michelle sees that there's only option A and B, the universe is showing me that there's unlimited options and possibilities. And so the minute that I decide something can only happen by one channel or another, I've just limited myself drastically and the way that the universe can provide it for me.
Hmm, I love that. Last question. I want to know: have you ever experienced like a really, I guess, high vibrational, or maybe a true ascended master, like individual here, and like in your reality, in this reality, 3D reality, and what did that energy feel like?
Yeah. So I actually do work with Jesus, and Jesus will come in a lot in mediumship reading. So, very similar to how it was in my near death experience. Although I want to tell you, he's really quite funny. Like humans have not done him right by not letting people know how funny he is. But his energy will come in. The vibration in the room, my hearing will change. It's like I'm starting to hear in another dimension. So it is literally changing the levels and dimensions within my room as well as the vibration. The other thing that I will notice is that when I'm working with Jesus closely like that, what I will feel is there's almost like a healing energy that is being channeled through my body that the sitter or the person I'm reading is also receiving on top of whatever the messages are.
Oh, I gotta ask you this. I gotta ask you this. Did he go to India? Did he ever tell you
Yes.
that?
Yes.
So you went to India. Um, did he, how do I word this? Did he resurrect or did he survive the cross, if that makes sense?
Well, he just said to me, tell him both. See, you're trying to limit him again. He did both
Oh,
because
wow.
he's a master healer. He's a master healer. We've never had a healer on this planet like Jesus.
So there's just so many mysteries and so many concepts of what happened really at the cross, right? Like there's a man that I follow closely on his work where he plays the idea like what if because Jesus was taken down 6 hours into the resurrection, like someone took the body and he was able to heal, and then they were able to escape and go back to India where he lived his life and he's
Mhm.
buried somewhere over there. And then there's others that have different philosophies about what actually happened. But I'm curious, like he says both. So
Right.
did he go back to India after the crucifixion and live out his life?
Well, this is what he's telling me to tell you. He's talking about quantum realities or quantum mechanics here, different timelines, right? So
Hmm.
there would have been a level of conscious humans that would have perceived him as dying on the cross and resurrecting from the tomb. And there would have been a group of them that were on a different timeline or a different conscious level that would have seen him come off the cross, be healed, and then go. So we're not just on this timeline. I know you know this. I know this gets confusing and takes us in a whole nother conversation. But it's true and true because it depends on who the observer is.
So it's like the Mandela effect.
Yes.
100%.
And also, there's a lot of what we would have as missing information around so much of that that's been written and taken and stored or whatever has happened with it. But it really feels like what he's wanting me to convey is that it's like the Mandela effect. It's whoever's perceiving the timeline because both are true.
What's his message for humanity right now?
Oh my gosh, it's just to it's kind of like stop screwing around and start loving each other and start appreciating each other. I mean, that's kind of like there's a firmness in it because we are getting to a critical point here. We see this is happening in the world. We see it if you watch the news. The planet's not doing well, on and on and on and on, right? We have wars. We are at the point in humanity where I do believe one of the shifts that people have been talking about is probably going to happen, where it's almost like the earth, we're all going to maybe live on the earth, but we're going to see different levels and different things. And pretty soon, we're going to need that version to coincide with our reality that's existing now.
Do you think there's an actual new Earth that we're going to go live on?
I don't. I think it's more like dimensional because I think on this earth right now, there are probably unlimited dimensions on this planet Earth. So I think it's more of this might be the home base, but it's a new vision or a new dimension. And what will happen is most people probably won't even notice it. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be like, yeah, that friend who we were never really in alignment, I never talk to them anymore. Like there's a natural separation. You know what I mean? I don't think that it's going to be one morning you and I wake up and say, oh, where did half the world go? It's not going to happen that way, but it's a conscious evolution shift.
Do you think there are entities like reptilians that are trying to like keep us down?
I mean, I definitely would say that's possible. I don't know that I've ever gotten. So, what I've been told about the reptilians by spirit is that they get a bad rap. I don't think that they're necessarily like these evil beings. But what I was told by spirit is that they feel everything extremely intense. So they have this reputation for being angry or violent, right? But also, let's look at this. They also love as intensely as they feel angry. So what I was told by spirit is it's that everything is that intense for them. It's like being born in a way with no skin on. Everything just goes right to you.
Sure. No, I've just been hearing a couple of people on different platforms talk about that, and then instead of just scoffing at it, like I probably would in the past, I'm trying to be open minded to different experiences or different philosophies, and just taking the lessons that I can learn from that. Like
Yeah.
to the point of the shadow, instead of making it creating more duality, kind of looking at it from a standpoint of it's just a part of us at some layer of the self, and how do you integrate that into into the larger self. And so when I hear stories like that, I look at it not as like literal, like there's reptilians like really trying to take over the world. I look at it as like, all right, what part of myself am I trying to control? What part of myself am
Mhm.
I, keeping in the dark and not really looking at and shining the light? How do I integrate that more into this, conscious self of Trey into my reality and heal that, if that makes sense?
Right. One of the easiest ways to heal is just to envelop things with love, right? It's not that it's going to take you years and years of therapy, but what if we take those things that hurt us the most in life, or the parts of us that we like the least or are fearful from, and we literally just see ourselves enveloping it in love every day? That will transmute it with time as we allow it to.
Well, I can tell you what, I love this conversation. How can people connect with you? How can they find out more about you? How can they maybe start a conversation with you?
Yeah, thank you. I've loved our conversation too. They can find out more about me at my website, Michelle Clare, CLARE.net. I have individual readings, group readings, online readings. I'll be putting out a master course the end of July on actually, it's about the soul agreement and changing your soul agreement during your lifetime while you're here and understanding what you came in with.
Ooh, I like that. Anything on your heart that you want to share right now as we close out?
Yeah, I just want to remind people that really our free will lives in our perspective. We can take a challenging situation and choose to see it from a different perspective, which is what transmutes us into being able to be free from carrying baggage and grief.
I love it. Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.